Something happened just hours after Mercedes dominated the Chinese Grand Prix, and now the FIA is taking a closer look. Because what looked like the perfect weekend for Mercedes may suddenly turn into a serious problem. Kimi Antonelli won the race. George Russell finished second. A dominant 1-2 finish in Shanghai. The W17 looked faster than every other car on the grid. Stronger on the straights. More efficient with its hybrid power. In fact, many engineers in the paddock noticed something unusual during the race. The Mercedes power unit seemed to maintain electrical deployment longer than its rivals on the longest straight of the circuit. And that single detail has now triggered something nobody expected. An FIA investigation. Right now, officials are reportedly taking a deeper look at the Mercedes engine data after the race. And if you follow Formula One closely, you already know what that means. Because when the FIA starts asking technical questions right after a dominant performance, it usually means someone in the paddock noticed something very interesting. The real question now is simple. Did Mercedes just build the most powerful engine on the grid? Or did the Chinese Grand Prix reveal something that the FIA wants to examine much more closely? Before we break down everything that happened in Shanghai, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Because the 2026 Formula One season has just begun, and the biggest controversy of the year may already be starting. At first, the Chinese Grand Prix looked like a dream weekend for Mercedes. From the very first practice sessions in Shanghai, the message from the timing screens was clear. The W17 was fast. Very fast. George Russell and Kimi Antonelli consistently appeared at the top of the timesheets, sometimes with a margin that surprised even the engineers inside the paddock. In some runs, the Mercedes was almost 0.8 of a second quicker than the closest Ferrari over a single lap. And when you see that kind of advantage in modern Formula One, people immediately start paying attention. Because gaps like that are extremely rare in the current era. The explanation, at least on the surface, seemed simple. The W17 looked incredibly balanced. The front end responded quickly when the drivers turned into the fast corners. The rear remained stable under heavy braking. And through the long sequences of corners in Shanghai, the Mercedes looked glued to the asphalt. But there was another element that stood out even more. The power unit. Observers around the circuit quickly noticed how smooth the Mercedes engine delivered its energy. There were no sudden spikes. No visible clipping at the end of the long straight. Instead, the hybrid system seemed to deploy power in a very controlled and continuous way. For the drivers, that kind of power delivery is extremely valuable. It means better traction when exiting corners, better acceleration along the straight, and most importantly, a predictable feeling behind the wheel. That advantage started to become obvious during the sprint race. George Russell took pole position for the sprint and controlled the race with authority. Charles Leclerc tried to stay close in the Ferrari. Lewis Hamilton followed behind. But every time they attempted to reduce the gap, the Mercedes seemed to have just enough extra speed to keep them behind. And that was only the beginning. Because the main race on Sunday would confirm something even more important. Mercedes was not just fast over one lap. They were fast over an entire race distance. When the lights went out, the start created a small moment of chaos. Lewis Hamilton launched brilliantly from third position. For a brief moment, the Ferrari driver actually took the lead in the opening sector. The crowd in Shanghai reacted immediately. But the excitement did not last long. On the long straight that follows, Kimi Antonelli used the slipstream and activated the full power of the Mercedes hybrid system. Within seconds, he passed Hamilton and retook the lead before the final hairpin. That overtake became one of the most important moments of the race. Because it revealed exactly where the Mercedes advantage was strongest. Not just in the corners, but in the power delivery along the straights. Once Antonelli was back in front, the rest of the race became a masterclass in control. He managed his tires carefully. He built a steady gap to Russell. Sometimes 5 seconds. Sometimes closer to 9 seconds depending on traffic. Behind them, Ferrari simply did not have enough performance to launch a real challenge. Hamilton secured the podium. Leclerc followed close behind. But neither of them could truly threaten the Mercedes drivers. And when the checkered flag finally appeared, the result confirmed what everyone had suspected since Friday. Kimi Antonelli won the Chinese Grand Prix. George Russell finished second. A dominant 1-2 finish for Mercedes. The W17 had officially become the reference car of the grid. But sometimes in Formula One, the moment a team looks strongest is exactly when the questions begin. But this is where the story begins to change. Because when a team suddenly dominates a race weekend like this, the rest of the paddock immediately starts looking for answers. Engineers from rival teams begin analyzing every detail. Onboard footage, telemetry estimates, speed traps. Even the smallest clues can reveal something important. And in Shanghai, one detail quickly started attracting attention. The long straight. It is one of the most revealing sections of the entire circuit. Drivers exit the previous corner slowly, then accelerate for several seconds before reaching the heavy braking zone at the hairpin. This is where the power unit matters most. And during the race, several teams noticed something unusual. The Mercedes cars did not just accelerate well. They seemed to keep deploying electrical energy longer than their rivals. In most cars, the hybrid system eventually reaches a point where the electrical deployment fades near the end of the straight. Drivers call it clipping. You can actually hear it sometimes in onboard footage. The engine sound changes slightly as the electrical boost disappears. But in Shanghai, the Mercedes power unit appeared to maintain that boost much deeper into the straight, almost all the way to the braking zone. And that is a huge advantage in Formula One. Because if you keep deploying hybrid power longer, you gain extra kilometers per hour at the end of the straight, which means easier overtakes and stronger defense. This was especially visible during Antonelli's move on Hamilton at the start of the race. Hamilton had the better launch. For a moment, Ferrari was leading. But the moment the cars reached the long straight, the Mercedes engine simply delivered more sustained power. Antonelli closed the gap quickly, then passed Hamilton before the hairpin with surprising ease. That move looked impressive at the time. But later, it also triggered questions. Because when a power unit behaves noticeably differently from the others, rival teams immediately become curious. And curiosity in Formula One often leads to formal questions. According to early reports circulating in the paddock after the race, some teams asked the FIA to take a closer look at the Mercedes energy deployment system. Not necessarily accusing Mercedes of doing something illegal, but asking for clarification. How exactly is the system managing its hybrid energy? How long can it deploy full electrical power? And does the behavior fully match the technical limits defined in the regulations? These kinds of questions are not unusual in Formula One. In fact, they happen almost every season. Whenever a team finds an advantage, others want to understand it. Sometimes the FIA simply confirms that everything is legal. Sometimes they issue a technical clarification. And in rare situations, an investigation can lead to deeper scrutiny. Right now, there is no official accusation against Mercedes. No confirmed violation. But the FIA reportedly wants to analyze the data more carefully, especially the hybrid deployment patterns from the Chinese Grand Prix. And that alone is enough to create tension inside the paddock. Because Mercedes has just delivered the most dominant performance of the young season. The W17 looks incredibly fast, balanced in the corners, efficient on the straights, and powered by what may currently be the strongest engine on the grid. But Formula One has a long history of moments like this. A team finds performance. Rivals notice, questions appear, and suddenly the governing body begins examining the details. Which raises a fascinating possibility. What if Mercedes has simply built the most efficient hybrid system of the new era? Or, what if the Chinese Grand Prix just revealed something that the FIA now wants to understand much more closely? And inside the Mercedes garage, the reaction to these questions was very careful. Because from the outside, everything looked perfect. A dominant race. Maximum points. Two drivers performing at the highest level. But inside a Formula One team, engineers know something important. Dominance always attracts attention. The moment your car becomes the reference of the grid, every rival team begins studying you. And Mercedes understands this better than anyone. They have lived through this situation before. During their years of domination in the previous era, rival teams constantly questioned their technical innovations. Sometimes it was their suspension system. Sometimes their aerodynamics. Sometimes their engine modes. So this time, after the Chinese Grand Prix, the team's response has been calm and controlled. Officially, Mercedes maintains that everything on the W17 is operating completely within the regulations. And from a technical perspective, there are several reasons why their performance in Shanghai could simply be the result of smart engineering. First, the balance of the car itself. Throughout the entire weekend, the W17 looked incredibly stable. Drivers could attack the fast corners without fighting the rear of the car. That stability allowed Antonelli and Russell to carry more speed through the middle sector of the circuit. Second, the energy management of the hybrid system. According to several technical analyses after the race, Mercedes appears to have optimized how the electrical energy is harvested and deployed across the lap. In simple terms, the system seems extremely efficient. It stores energy effectively during braking, and then releases it smoothly during acceleration. That efficiency may explain why the Mercedes cars looked so strong at the end of the long straight. Not necessarily because they have more power, but because they are using their energy in a smarter way. And this is exactly the kind of advantage teams search for at the beginning of a new regulation cycle. Every new era of Formula One rewards the teams that understand the rules faster than everyone else. Right now, it appears that Mercedes may have found that understanding earlier than their rivals. The W17 seems to operate within a wide performance window. It is fast in qualifying, fast in sprint races, and extremely competitive over full race distance. But even with all those strengths, the Chinese Grand Prix also revealed something else: small signs of vulnerability. During qualifying, George Russell experienced a brief electronic problem that temporarily locked his car in first gear. The team had to perform a quick system reset to bring the car back to normal operation. It was not a major issue, and Russell still managed to secure second place on the grid. But moments like that remind everyone inside the paddock that the 2026 cars are extremely complex machines. The new hybrid systems, the advanced electronics, the deeper integration between chassis and power unit, all of it creates incredible performance. But it also increases the number of things that can go wrong. And that is exactly why the FIA always pays close attention to the early races of a new era. Because the first few events often reveal technical interpretations that were not fully explored during winter testing. Sometimes those interpretations are completely legal. Sometimes they exist in a gray area. And sometimes they force the FIA to clarify the rules. Right now, the Mercedes situation appears to fall into the first category. A very fast car, a very efficient power unit, and rivals who want to understand exactly how it works. But as the paddock leaves Shanghai and prepares for the next race, one thing is already certain. Mercedes has just sent a very clear message to the rest of Formula One. The W17 is not just competitive. It might be the benchmark of the entire grid.